every single day. You're being robbed of time, money, and peace of mind by problems that shouldn't exist in your life for more than 30 minutes, while you're losing sleep, damaging your relationships, and missing opportunities because you don't know how to think systematically. There are people in your same situation who are solving identical problems before you've even figured out what's wrong. They're not lucky, they're not privileged, and they're definitely not more intelligent than you. They simply refuse to accept the myth that problems are supposed to be hard, time-consuming, and stressful to solve. At exactly 2:47 in the morning, the phone rang in the home of Robert Chen, CEO of Pacific Industries. The voice on the other end was shaking. His production manager was calling from the factory floor where a critical machine had just broken down. This wasn't just any machine. It was the heart of their entire operation. Without it, they would miss the biggest order in company history. $50 million was on the line. The client had made it clear, deliver on time or lose the contract forever. Most people in Robert's position would have panicked. Most people would have rushed to the factory, started shouting orders, and made the situation 10 times worse. But Robert didn't do what most people do. Instead, he sat quietly for exactly 30 minutes and used a method that not only saved his company, but transformed how he handled every challenge for the rest of his life. What Robert did that night represents the difference between people who thrive under pressure and those who crumble. It's the difference between leaders who solve problems and managers who create more of them. And today, I'm going to share with you the exact same method Robert used, a method that can solve any problem you face in just 30 minutes. But first, let me tell you why most people fail completely when problems hit their lives. The statistics are shocking. Research shows that 97% of people actually make their problems worse when they try to solve them. Think about that for a moment. Nearly everyone you know is walking around making their lives harder instead of easier. They're creating more stress, more confusion, and more pain for themselves and everyone around them. Why does this happen? It starts with what I call the panic response. The moment a problem appears, your brain goes into emergency mode. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, your thinking becomes narrow and focused only on the immediate threat. This response served our ancestors well when they faced hungry tigers, but it's completely useless when you're dealing with modern challenges. When you're in panic mode, your brain can only see two options, fight or run away. But most of life's real problems can't be punched in the face or escaped by running to another city. You need to think clearly, gather information, consider multiple options, and make intelligent decisions. The panic response makes all of this impossible. Here's what happens to most people when a problem hits. Let's say you get a call from your bank saying your account is overdrawn. Immediately, your mind starts racing. You begin thinking about all the checks that might bounce, the fees you'll have to pay, what your spouse will say. Within minutes, you've turned a simple accounting error into a full-scale financial disaster in your mind. Or maybe you get called into your boss's office unexpectedly, before you even sit down. You're already thinking about everything you might have done wrong. Whether you're about to be fired, how you'll pay your mortgage if you lose your job. You walk into that meeting already defeated, unable to think clearly or respond effectively to whatever your boss actually wants to discuss. This is the cost of poor problem solving in your life. Every time you panic instead of think, you lose. You lose opportunities, you lose money, you lose relationships, you lose respect from others and confidence in yourself. And worst of all, you create a pattern that makes every future problem seem bigger and scarier than it really is. The average person faces approximately 7 significant problems every single week. That's over 350 problems per year if you're handling each one poorly. If you're making each one worse through panic and poor thinking, you're essentially guaranteeing yourself a life of constant stress and struggle. But here's what's even more tragic. Most of the advice people give you about problem solving is completely wrong. They tell you to stay positive, when what you really need is to face reality clearly. They tell you to trust your gut, when your gut is usually wrong about complex situations. They tell you to take action immediately, when the worst thing you can do is act before you understand what you're really dealing with. Traditional advice fails because it doesn't account for how your brain actually works under pressure. It doesn't give you a systematic way to cut through confusion and get to the real solution. It leaves you guessing, hoping, and praying instead of thinking and acting strategically. I've spent over 4 decades studying high achievers, successful business leaders, and people who consistently solve problems effectively. What I've found is that they all do something different when problems arise. They don't panic, they don't guess, they don't hope for the best. Instead, they follow a specific process that allows them to see clearly, think strategically, and act decisively every single time. This process is what saved Robert's company that night. While his competitors would have been running around in circles, making phone calls to anyone who would listen, Robert sat down with a legal pad and worked through a system that revealed not just a solution to his immediate crisis, but a way to prevent similar problems from ever happening again. The machine breakdown that could have destroyed his business became the catalyst for improvements that made his company stronger than ever. The 30 minutes he spent thinking systematically saved him millions of dollars and positioned his company as the most reliable supplier in their industry. This is what becomes possible when you stop reacting to problems and start solving them systematically. This is what your life looks like when you have a proven method for handling whatever challenges come your way. And this method isn't complicated, mysterious, or available only to a select few. It's simple, practical, and something anyone can learn and use immediately. But before I share this method with you, you need to understand exactly what you're dealing with when a problem appears in your life. You need to understand the true anatomy of problems themselves. Because until you see problems clearly, you'll never be able to solve them effectively. Every problem that has ever existed, from the smallest personal challenge to the largest business crisis, follows the same basic structure. Understanding this structure is like having X-ray vision for difficulties. Once you see it, you'll never be confused by a problem again. The problem is simply the gap between where you are now and where you want to be. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. The gap might be small or large, simple or complex, but it's always fundamentally the same thing. A distance between your current reality and your desired outcome. Most people never see this clearly. They see problems as mysterious forces attacking them from the outside. They see problems as punishment for their past mistakes or evidence that life is unfair. But successful people see problems differently. They see them as information. They see them as feedback. They see them as temporary situations that can be changed through the right actions. Your brain, however, is wired to make problem solving harder than it needs to be when you encounter a problem. Your first instinct is to focus on what's wrong, what's broken, what's not working. This is exactly backwards from what you should be doing. Your first instinct keeps you stuck in the problem instead of moving you toward the solution. Let me give you an example. Maria runs a small consulting business. 1 month, her income drops by 40%. Her first instinct is to panic about the bills she can't pay, the clients she's losing, the mistakes she must have made. She spends days worrying about what's wrong with her business, what's wrong with her marketing, what's wrong with her approach. But what if Maria approached this differently? What if instead of focusing on what's wrong, she focused on the gap between where she is and where she wants to be? Her current income is 60% of normal. Her desired income is 100% of normal. The gap is 40%. Now she has something concrete to work with. This shift in thinking changes everything. Instead of being overwhelmed by everything that might be wrong, Maria can focus on one specific question. What actions will close this 40% gap? Suddenly, the problem becomes manageable. It becomes solvable. This is exactly what happened at Microsoft in the early 1990s when the internet threatened to make their entire business model obsolete. While other companies were panicking about the threat of the World Wide Web, Microsoft's leadership saw the situation differently. They saw the gap between where they were, focused on desktop software, and where they needed to be, dominant in internet technology, instead of being paralyzed by the size of the challenge. They focused on closing that gap. They redirected their entire company toward internet technologies. They turned their biggest crisis into their greatest opportunity. Today, Microsoft is one of the most valuable companies in the world, largely because they knew how to see problems clearly and respond systematically. The key insight here is that there are only 3 types of problems you'll ever face in your life. Understanding which type you're dealing with determines your entire approach to solving it. The first type is what I call maintenance problems. These are problems that arise from normal wear and tear in your life. Your car needs new tires, your computer crashes, your roof starts leaking. These problems are predictable and preventable with proper planning, but they still require your attention when they occur. The second type is growth problems. These are problems that arise because you're trying to achieve something new or bigger than what you've done before. You want to increase your income, so you face the problem of learning new skills. You want to improve your relationship, so you face the problem of changing old habits. These problems are actually good signs. They mean you're growing. The third type is crisis problems. These are unexpected problems that threaten something important to you. You lose your job unexpectedly, a key client cancels a major contract, a family member becomes seriously ill. These problems require immediate attention and careful handling. Most people treat all 3 types the same way, with panic and confusion, but each type requires a different approach, different timing, and different resources. When you can identify which type of problem you're facing, you can respond appropriately instead of making the situation worse. Now that you understand what problems really are and why your natural instincts work against you, it's time to learn the method that changes everything. This is the same system Robert used that night when $50 million was on the line. This is the same approach Microsoft used to transform an existential threat into market dominance. And this is the method you can use starting today to solve any problem you face in exactly 30 minutes. The method has 6 steps, and each step serves a specific purpose in moving you from confusion to clarity, from panic to power, from problem to solution. The entire process takes exactly 30 minutes because that's the optimal amount of time for your brain to work through complex information without becoming overwhelmed or distracted. Step 1 is what I call the clarity question. Before you can solve any problem, you must be absolutely clear about what the problem actually is. Most people skip this step entirely and start trying to fix things before they understand what's broken. The clarity question is simple. What exactly is the problem I need to solve? Write this question at the top of a piece of paper, and then write your answer in one clear sentence. Not a paragraph, not a list of complaints, but one specific sentence that defines the gap between where you are and where you want to be. If you can't state your problem in one sentence, you don't understand your problem well enough to solve it. Step 2 is systematic data collection. Spend exactly 5 minutes gathering all the relevant facts about your situation. What happened? When did it happen? Who was involved? What resources do you have available? What constraints are you working within? Write down only facts, not opinions or emotions. This step prevents you from making decisions based on incomplete or inaccurate information. Step 3 is option generation. This is where most people limit themselves severely. They see only 2 or 3 possible solutions when there are usually 10 or more. Set a timer for 5 minutes and write down every possible solution you can think of, no matter how crazy or impractical it might seem. The goal is quantity, not quality. You want to get your creative mind working and break out of conventional thinking patterns. Step 4 is the decision matrix. Take your list of options and evaluate each one against 3 criteria. How effective will this solution be? How fast can I implement it? What will it cost in time, money, or energy? Give each option a score from 1 to 10 for each criterion. The option with the highest total score is usually your best choice. Step 5 is action planning. Once you've chosen your solution, spend 5 minutes creating a specific action plan. What exactly will you do first? What will you do second? What will you do third? Who do you need to involve? What resources do you need to gather? When will you start? When will you finish? A solution without a plan is just a wish. Step 6 is the follow-up system. Most people solve a problem once and then forget about it until it comes back. This is why the same problems keep recurring in their lives. Before you implement your solution, decide how you will monitor the results and what you will do if the problem starts to return. Prevention is always easier than cure. This entire process takes exactly 30 minutes. 5 minutes for clarity, 5 minutes for data collection, 5 minutes for generating options, 5 minutes for evaluation, 5 minutes for planning, and 5 minutes for setting up your follow-up system. When you follow this method, you engage both your analytical mind and your creative mind in a systematic way that produces better solutions faster than any other approach I've ever seen. The power of this method isn't just in solving the immediate problem. It's in training your brain to approach all problems systematically instead of emotionally. After you've used this method 20 or 30 times, it becomes automatic. You stop panicking when problems appear because you know exactly what to do. You become the person others turn to when things go wrong because you have a reputation for thinking clearly under pressure. But theory without practice is worthless. Let me show you exactly how this method works in real situations that could happen to anyone. These are actual cases where people used this system to transform disasters into opportunities. Jennifer Martinez was facing financial ruin. Her husband had lost his job. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage, and creditors were calling daily. She had twin daughters starting college in 6 months, and her savings account was empty. Most people in her situation would have spent weeks worrying, arguing with their spouse, and making desperate phone calls to relatives. Instead, Jennifer sat down with the 30-minute method. Her clarity question was simple. How do I generate enough income to save our house and pay for college during data collection? She listed her skills, contacts, and available time. She had 15 years of accounting experience, knew dozens of small business owners, and could work evenings and weekends. In option generation, she came up with 12 different ways to earn money quickly, from freelance bookkeeping to selling items online to starting a tax preparation service. Using the decision matrix, freelance bookkeeping scored highest for effectiveness, speed, and low startup costs. Her action plan involved contacting 10 former colleagues within 48 hours and offering immediate bookkeeping services. Within 2 weeks, Jennifer had 3 regular clients. Within 2 months, she was earning more than her husband's previous salary. The mortgage was saved, college was funded, and she had started a business that eventually became more profitable than either of their previous jobs. The crisis that could have destroyed their family became the foundation for their greatest financial success. David Thompson faced a different kind of disaster. He had just been promoted to regional manager when he learned that his biggest client was planning to cancel their contract. This contract represented 40% of his region's revenue. His predecessor had assured him everything was solid, but now David was facing the possibility of massive layoffs and the end of his own career before it really started. Using the method. David's clarity question was, how do I keep this client and prove my value as a manager? His data collection revealed that the client wasn't actually unhappy with the service, but was under pressure to cut costs from their own board of directors. The real problem wasn't performance, it was price. David generated 15 different approaches, from renegotiating terms to offering additional services at no cost, to finding ways to demonstrate measurable value. His highest scoring option was to propose a performance-based contract where his company would share the financial risk in exchange for a longer commitment. The result, not only did David save the contract, but he negotiated terms that were more profitable than the original agreement. His creative solution impressed both his client and his own executives. Within a year, he was promoted again and became the youngest vice president in company history. The method works because it forces you to think when your emotions want you to panic. It gives you a systematic way to cut through confusion and get to solutions that actually work. Consider what happens when this method becomes part of who you are, when facing problems no longer triggers panic but activates a systematic process that you trust completely. When other people are losing their minds over challenges, you're calmly working through solutions. When crisis hits your industry, your company, or your family, you become the rock that everyone else depends on. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it happens faster than you might think. Research in neuroscience shows that when you repeat a new behavior consistently for 21 days, your brain begins to automate that behavior. The neural pathways become stronger with each repetition until the new way of thinking becomes your default response. After 21 days of using this method, something remarkable happens. When problems appear, instead of your heart racing and your mind going blank, you automatically ask yourself, what exactly is the problem I need to solve? Your brain immediately shifts into solution mode instead of panic mode. You become calm, focused, and confident because you know exactly what to do. But the real magic happens after 90 days. By then, you've used this method on dozens of different problems. You've seen it work on financial challenges, relationship issues, career obstacles, health concerns, and business crises. You've built unshakable confidence in your ability to handle whatever life throws at you. You've become what I call problem-proof. Let me tell you about Thomas Chin, a manufacturing supervisor who transformed his entire life using this method. Thomas worked for a company that made automotive parts, and problems were a daily occurrence. Machines broke down, deliveries were late, quality issues appeared, and his boss seemed to blame him for everything that went wrong. For years, Thomas lived in constant stress. He would lie awake at night worrying about what might go wrong the next day. His wife complained that he was always tense and distracted. His teenage son barely spoke to him because Thomas was always preoccupied with work problems. He was taking medication for high blood pressure and had developed an ulcer from chronic stress. Everything changed when Thomas learned this 30-minute method. The first time he used it was when their main production line went down during their busiest season. Instead of running around frantically trying to fix everything at once, Thomas took 30 minutes to work through the system. His clarity question was, how do I restore full production capacity as quickly as possible? His data collection revealed that the problem wasn't just mechanical, it was also about worker scheduling and backup procedures. His option generation produced 8 different approaches, from emergency repairs to temporary workarounds to long-term preventive measures. The solution that scored highest in his decision matrix was to implement parallel production using smaller machines while repairing the main line. This approach got them back to 80% capacity immediately while working toward full restoration. His action plan included specific assignments for each team member and clear timelines for each phase of the recovery. The result amazed everyone. What usually would have been a week-long crisis was resolved in 2 days. Production exceeded targets for the month despite the breakdown. Thomas's boss was so impressed that he asked Thomas to teach his approach to other supervisors. But the real transformation happened in Thomas's personal life. As he became more confident at work, he became more relaxed at home. He stopped bringing work stress home with him because he knew he could handle any problem that arose. His relationship with his wife improved dramatically. His son started coming to him for advice because Thomas had become someone who solved problems instead of being overwhelmed by them. Within 6 months, Thomas's blood pressure returned to normal and his ulcer healed. His boss promoted him to production manager. His team became the most efficient in the company because they had learned his systematic approach to problem solving. Thomas had become the person everyone turned to when things went wrong. This is what becomes possible when problem solving becomes automatic for you. The compound effect is extraordinary. Better decisions lead to better results. Better results lead to more opportunities. More opportunities lead to a better life. Every problem you solve effectively makes you stronger and more capable of handling the next challenge. But here's what most people don't realize. When you become good at solving problems, you actually face fewer problems. This isn't magic or positive thinking. It's simple cause and effect. People who solve problems well make better decisions, which prevent many problems from occurring in the first place. They also address small issues before they become big crises. Your family benefits because you become a source of stability and wisdom instead of stress and chaos. Your career accelerates because employers value people who can think clearly under pressure. Your finances improve because you make better decisions about money, investments, and career moves. Your health improves because chronic stress disappears from your life. I now want to give you a challenge that will change everything for you. For the next 30 days, use this method on every significant problem you encounter. Keep a notebook specifically for this purpose. Write down each problem, work through the 6 steps, and record the results. Start with smaller problems to build your confidence and skill. That annoying situation with your neighbor, the inefficiency in your morning routine, the communication issue with your teenager. As you get comfortable with the method, apply it to bigger challenges. Here's what will happen. In the first week, you'll be surprised by how much clearer problems become when you define them properly. In the second week, you'll start generating more creative solutions than you ever thought possible. In the third week, other people will start noticing that you handle stress differently. By the 4th week, you'll realize that problems no longer scare you. After 30 days, you'll be a different person. You'll be someone who sees problems as puzzles to solve rather than threats to fear. You'll be someone others trust to think clearly when everyone else is panicking. You'll be someone who creates solutions instead of excuses. The person you become when problems don't scare you anymore is someone who can achieve anything they set their mind to. Because ultimately, every goal you want to achieve is just a problem to solve. Want to double your income? That's a problem to solve. Want to improve your relationships? That's a problem to solve. Want to get in the best shape of your life? That's a problem to solve. When you have a proven method for solving any problem in 30 minutes, you have the key to creating any life you want. The only question is, are you ready to become that person? Are you ready to stop being overwhelmed by problems and start being empowered by your ability to solve them? Your new life begins the moment you decide to stop reacting and start thinking systematically. It begins the moment you choose to use this method instead of hoping things will somehow work out on their own. It begins right now with whatever problem you're facing today. Take out a piece of paper, write down the problem that's been bothering you most, and then spend the next 30 minutes discovering just how powerful you really are.